Everyone at work thought this one coworker was broke. Everyone at the office felt a little sorry for Mark. He wore the same 3 faded button-down shirts on rotation, brought a modest brown bag lunch every single day, and drove a car so old it had a cassette player. When the collection envelope went around for birthdays or baby showers, his contribution was always the folded $5 bill, slipped in with a quiet, apologetic smile. We all assumed he was just getting by, a quiet, kind man stretched thin by life's demands. I sat next to him, so I saw the little things. The way he'd meticulously repair his worn-out leather satchel with a tiny sewing kit instead of buying a new one. How he'd politely decline after-work drinks, citing a need to get home. We'd whisper, "It must be tough," and include him in our potlucks, always making sure he had a full plate. Then came the mandatory team-building retreat, a weekend at a notoriously expensive lakeside lodge. The company was covering lodging, but we had to pay for our own travel. Mark looked genuinely stressed when the email came out. "I'm not sure I can make the logistics work," he mumbled to our manager, who gave him a pitying pat on the shoulder. The day before the trip, our department head gathered us. "Great news," he announced, beaming. "An anonymous donor has stepped up. They've covered the travel costs for the entire team. Flights, rental cars, everything. All because they believe in our collaborative spirit." The room erupted in cheers. We speculated wildly. Was it a grateful client? A philanthropic board member? Mark just smiled softly at his desk, fiddling with that old sewing kit. The retreat was a blur of activities. On the final night, we had a fancy gala dinner. I stepped out onto the grand terrace for some air and found Mark alone, looking out at the moonlit lake. He was on the phone. "Yes. The conservation easement on the North 40 is finalized," he was saying, his voice different, authoritative, calm. "Tell the foundation the funds are ready for the quarter, and please have James bring the car around at 10. The Mercedes, not the Range Rover. It's less noticeable." He hung up and saw me. The familiar, gentle Mark returned, but his eyes held a new candor. "Caught me," he said with a small, sheepish laugh. "Mark, what was that?" "The anonymous donor. That was you, wasn't it?" He nodded, looking back at the water. "My grandfather always said money is a tool, not a trophy. He built a life, then a business, then a fortune. He also taught me that the loudest person in the room is often the poorest in ways that matter." He shrugged. "I like my simple life. I like my car. I like knowing who my real friends are. If people think I'm broke, they treat me like a person, not a portfolio." I was speechless. The $5 bills, the packed lunches, the mended satchel. It was never about scarcity. It was a profound, deliberate choice. "So, the foundation?" I finally asked. "Environmental causes, mostly," he said. Quietly, the donor prefers to remain anonymous. We walked back to the party together. Inside, our boisterous VP was holding court, bragging about his new sports car. I watched Mark pour himself a glass of the complimentary punch, give a genuine laugh at a colleague's joke, and blend seamlessly back into the background. But I saw him differently now, not as the man with the least, but as the man who, by having so much,